Computer.
Hello.
Yeah. What's going on, Jack? Thanks for coming to the episode, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, mate. Cheers, Jordan, for having me. It's good to hear from you, mate. It's good to be on. Thanks for having me again.
You're welcome, pal. You're one of the first people I thought of when I decided to put this podcast on. So it's good stuff. It's good stuff. So awesome. How about you kind of give us a little bit of a rundown, mate, on who you are, who is Jack, and then a little bit of, where you've spent your time over the past few years and give us a little bit of a background on yourself, mate.
Yeah, cool. So full name, Jack Westley. I'm a strength and conditioning coach currently at Nottingham Rugby. So we compete in the championship, currently heading up the programme. I started my strength and conditioning career at Doncaster with Doncaster Knights in 2016. Spent a couple of years there while I was studying my masters, which is where I met yourself. And then straight after finishing my masters, I went to France for 3 years, where I was head of academy, head of women's rugby at a team in Normandy, and then I moved on to head of physical performance down in Dijon, where I stayed there for 2 years during all the COVID seasons and whatnot, before obviously coming home. And yeah, now I'm at Nottingham, mate. So loving life back home.
Sick. It's a very northern podcast we've got going on today. It's
I've got a very thick Yorkshire accent, mate. Sorry, I'll try and tone it down.
Mate, we're going to put subtitles on, I reckon.
You'll need them.
We'll be fine. Sweet. So in terms of, I guess, your career so far, mate, is rugby where you always kind of saw yourself going towards them? Did you play rugby back in the day, or is it just something you've kind of gravitated towards?
Yeah, not at all, mate. So, it's quite funny. I've never played rugby in my life. I almost fell into the role as a work experience through knowing a physio. So it was a work experience module that I did while I was at Beckett studying up there. And then I went in, loved it, brought a little bit of me into their program and into their sort of injured players return to play stuff. And they asked me to keep coming for the rest of the season, and it's just built in from there. Yeah, I'm coming up to my 8th season in rugby now. So again, I've not really got a massive rugby background. I've always watched it. I've always loved it, but I've never actually played. My background's in boxing, so I've always boxed. Played a little bit of football here and there, but never at any decent level. So yeah, rugby was just a completely different environment for me that I just loved straight away, hence why I'm still in it. But yeah, I love it, mate. I love being in the rugby environment. It's awesome.
How did you kind of find that transition then from, I've been around a few different rugby programs in the past, and I guess some of them are a little bit more clicky than others, and some are absolutely sound. Some are like, if you're a sound person, you're welcome. And then I've been around some where it's kind of like a little bit of an outcast environment. Have you ever kind of experienced any of those, or has it always been like, welcome and come in?
Yeah, not necessarily. I think I was very fortunate when I was going into Doncaster with the group that were there and sort of where they were in the league, how they were doing, the team culture and all that sort of stuff. We're quite fortunate to work with who I work with. You're always going to have individuals that see you as an outcast that are not always as open as what everybody else is, but they were definitely very fortunate at my time where I started at Doncaster with the people that were there. Like, I will look at 100%. But I think having that boxing background opens up quite a few conversations early doors. It's not to do with rugby, which I think I quite like, if that makes sense. So talking to me about the big fight of the weekend, or he's fighting so-and-so in 3 months' time, who do you think is going to win? Like, it opens doors for conversation. And I think that helped quite a lot as well.
Yeah, I suppose it's that softer skills, isn't it? Just being able to actually be a decent person that people want to be around, and it isn't always just speaking to them about sets and reps.
No,
yeah,
exactly,
I definitely get that.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. So with your, I guess, 8 seasons within rugby then, so what would you kind of say is your, it's a really broad question and kind of see where you go with this. What's kind of your philosophy around training rugby players at the moment, and has that changed over the past few years at all?
My philosophy is keep it simple, which is very cliche, I think, but I think it gets quite easily lost in an industry where everybody's looking for the next best thing every day of the week, every month of the year, sort of thing. Like, I think if you do the basic things very well, you're in a good way, you're in a good position straight from the bat. And I've been in places where I think, I'm going to try all these new things and step out of my comfort zone. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not saying I do everything the same every year, because what you find with working season to season in rugby is you learn something new every year, whether you realise it or not. But definitely keep it simple. Do the simple things well. And I think one thing that probably follows on from that this year at Nottingham, we've been training as part-time, so we've been training 2 nights a week. It's, yes, keeping it simple, but then there's also one battle that I've had this year is doing things that you have to do or that you need to do rather than things that you want to do, if that makes sense. So yes, it's nice to try all these new fancy movements and all this, whatever you want to implement on the field or in the gym and whatnot, but essentially we've got 2 nights a week. It's not a lot of time on task for us to get what we need to get for the weekend. So it's, how does that filter in to the week, over the weeks, over the months, to become part of the process, if that makes sense?
Absolutely, mate. So
yeah,
I guess what I'm taking from that is prioritizing the things that are most important, and all the kind of 1% stuff that can be further down the line once you've taken care of the 20%ers, the 30%ers, and
100%, man. I think it's so key in environments, and especially going out to France where S&C is still quite young, and it's very much who's got the best video on Instagram or who's got the best video on LinkedIn sometimes over there, which I have found quite a lot, and it's actually educating players around. Let's do the basics well. Let's hit those, like you said, 20-30%ers consistently. Do it well, keep it consistent, build the base, and then we can start sharpening the tools from there, if that makes sense, and trying new things. But yeah, it's for me, keeping it simple and trust the process, all that cliche stuff.
Yeah, no, it's right. I think I was on about this the other day with Mike Moore. I know big guy with a beard, ugly, very, very ugly. But we were talking around, the comparison between pro sport and university sport. And even though a lot of people see pro sport as the time and the place where you try all these 1%, all the flashy shit, chances are it's the opposite of what you need, because they're playing so often, they really have this huge training schedule that you need to fit things around. And actually university sports were really where you can trial those new things. You can
definitely.
It sounds bad to say, but you can experiment a little bit more. You've got 100%. That freedom.
Less risk, if that makes sense. If you try something new and it doesn't come off, and but it never happens, but somebody gets injured, the key player at the weekend, you're in trouble, man. You're in big trouble. So it's not that we don't take risks, because I think if you don't take risks, don't push the players, you're never going to get better. Mm-hmm. It's just being smart on how that risk looks and minimizing the risk that comes with it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
But I agree, obviously working with you in that university setting, you can try new things, you can. And it doesn't have to be anything wild. It could just be trying a new system that's been in place, something trying different cluster methods, trying a triphasic program, something that's going to be completely different to what you know or what you've used before. But having the confidence to then lead it, coach it, teach it, it is different. You can use that in a university setting more than you can probably in a professional setting, which, again, us being part-time, one thing that we've had to factor in this year is not necessarily the training load, but actually the workload. We've got people that are at university that are just coaches. We've got people that work in offices, but then we've got people that are working 10-hour shifts on construction sites and then comes to training. So then them getting a lift in before training, is that actually key to what they need, or where's the priority, if that makes sense? So those are the different challenges, again, that I've been presented with this year, which I never have been before. It's been good challenges, and we've learned a lot of things. So hopefully we'll be able to implement a few things a lot better next year, which is good. We're always learning.
How do you approach that then, from I guess you making sure that everybody gets their work done? How are you managing, you that works on a building site, me that's got 2 kids, and somebody else who's essentially full-time, even though he's part-time? How are you kind of navigating those different issues?
We do it in different ways, mate. So again, knowing somebody's going to be coming into a gym session, feeling tired, they're probably not going to get much out of it. They just want to chill out, play some music or whatever on the speakers. What's the point? Go chill out for an hour. You're on a construction site lifting heavy stuff all day. Do we need to then make them lift more heavy stuff just because we want them to, if that makes sense? Do they need to do it? And again, it comes back to the wants and needs of the program. Yes, it's all right saying we run this perfect program. The perfect program doesn't exist. If we know that this guy's going to get better by keeping him fresh, leaving him off the gym stuff, but keeping them ready for the field stuff, is that them doing one scrum every 3 or 2 scrums every 3? Does that make sense? That's how we probably try to monitor it. We might have a run block where we're doing a little bit of conditioning top-ups. In the middle of the winter, we're on a rough pitch. We know we're not going to hit the high speed that we need. So we'll throw in some tempos, for example, mid-session. Does that person need to do that because they've run a lot last week, or because they've been working hard all day, they've had a bit of a shit day at work? Like, those are the factors that we sort of have to think about for players. And I'm not going to say we've got it 100% right this season, because we're all learning still, and we've got a new head coach, myself who's new, we've got all new staff, new people around the environment. So it's a lot of people are learning a lot of things, which I think will become a lot better next season, if that makes sense. So
how are the coaches, the new head coach and the people that you've got around you, how receptive are they to those little tweaks that you said? Like, for example, we've got, I know, Graham coming in and he's absolutely fucked, mate. Like, I think we probably need to reduce his scrum load or less time on pitch. How receptive are they to that? Did it take some convincing, or?
Not really. We've got quite a young coaching team, I'd say, which I think is a good thing. In terms of, if we say they're always going to push back, which you need that, if that makes sense. They're always going to challenge what you're saying to them. But if we present them with X, Y, and Z, then they are quite receptive. Like, we've got a good relationship with the coaches, especially like with the head coach. He's massive on like CrossFit and working and training. So I think he understands himself that when the body needs a rest, the body needs a rest, sort of thing. And that's not cutting people out of sessions completely. It's just modifying how that session actually looked for that one person, or those 3 people, or those 5 people. It's finding the right balance. But then obviously, if it comes to, well, we're supposed to be doing live scrummages tonight, you need 16 forwards and we've only got 14. If you suddenly take 3 away, then it becomes a little bit more challenging, if that makes sense. So that's when we just have to start being a little bit smarter on different areas and where's the next place we can take them out of, sort of thing. But yeah.
So would you say that skill for you then has been developing over the past few years, your past 8 years in rugby, or has it really been tested in this last year with Nottingham? You said how there's been a lot more challenges this year than in previous.
I think it's definitely something that I've learned more this year. While it's still a similar process while you've got injured players in a professional environment and having to modify their sessions, it's different in the terms that it's from a working thing, and that we've only got 2.5 hours of time to train rugby in the week before the game, which is not a lot of time compared to your other teams in the league that are full-time, that are training 4 days a week, sort of thing. Like, we don't have the time on task we do. So it's again falls back to the wants and needs. And I think it's understanding that on a rugby perspective as well. One thing that we collectively said this year that we want to get better on is that the wants and the needs of what we need to do, and what we want to do, getting that right, which will be key for us next year, I think.
It sounds, just from kind of hearing you talk, mate, you've got this this philosophy and this vision of, what the best thing to make somebody better at rugby is rugby, and it sounds
100%.
It sounds so simple, doesn't it? But I think sometimes we need that little bit of a nudge that this is what they get paid to do. This is their sole objective. And the number one thing is just playing rugby more, getting some high quality skill work, getting some good, practice games in, those types of things.
The way that I look at some of it sometimes is that, yes, it's good to train the physical side of it, and put boys under pressure through manipulating different games, through time constraints, through pitch size constraints, anything like that. But the way that I see it is, if you've got a group of guys that have got a skill set of, let's just say, 6 out of 10, right? Before fatigue, pre-fatigue, the 6 out of 10 skill set. When they get to fatigue, their skill set then becomes a 3. Does that make sense? So that's run, catch, pass, that's kicking, that's tackling, anything. If you've got a group of guys that are a 9 out of 10 with their skill set, when they get fatigued, they then don't drop drastically to a 3. They might drop to a 6. So if you're superior with your technical, tactical ability, when the fatigue sets in, the drop-off's not going to be as drastic, but the skills will still be there. You can get away with the skill stuff. Does that make sense? So you can still execute the pass that you need to execute. You can still make the tackles that you need to make. I think it's often overlooked sometimes how important that part of it is, if that makes sense. Yes, my job is strength and conditioning. My job is to get fitter, faster, stronger. But it's also to push the rugby side of it as well. So to push the skill sets and to push the tactical awareness side. And it's my job to support the coaches in what they're delivering on the field as well. So it's not, oh, I'm just doing the fitness. So while we're on the rugby pitch, I'm just like, I'm done. Like, I'm chilling. I'll just run a bit with a few of the guys or run waters or whatever. It's reinforcing what we want out of the boys, reinforcing the calls, reinforcing some of the key words that would set in somebody's mind for them to make a kick sprint, for them to get off the line quicker and things like that. And I think that's where my job filters in quite a lot as well. So it's not just the S&C, it's being part of that team to drive the rugby.
It sounds,
which I love.
It sounds really integrated. I think that's the word that I'm kind of getting there. It's not separate entities. It really is, we are one team pushing in the same direction. We haven't got a physio pulling one way. We haven't got the head coach pulling that way, and the S&C, just doing what he wants. Would you say in the past, have you ever kind of been more of that guy? Because I know I have. Have you ever had those roles or those experiences where you've kind of like just deviated a little bit because, we know better, those types of things? You ever had those?
100%, mate. Like France in a nutshell, like literally, like, again, it comes back to, I don't know what it is. Like, I don't know if it's just the mentality over there or what, but it's almost, we've done it this way forever, so this is how we do it, or we're going to do it this way. And it doesn't always work like that. Like, I remember there were sessions last year and it was supposed to be the hardest session of the week, and I kept almost fighting for it to be, we need to push them, we need to push them, we need to push them. There's just no intensity in the session. And yeah, again, you talk about breaking away to do skill stuff. Everything that we seemed to do was 15 against 15, which is okay, but when you do that week in, week out, it gets a bit dull. And how did players get better then? Does that make sense? So then, I start to add in things in the warm up, which I probably shouldn't be coming from me, if that makes sense. So little skill workshops, little 3-minute, where we normally do an activation station or a little bit of a warm up or whatever. Suddenly we're doing a run, catch, pass. We're doing a breakdown drill or whatever. And to the point where one time one of the coaches come up to me and is like, "Oh, we should be doing that." And I was like, "Well, yeah, you should." That's my point. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So yeah, definitely, there's been that, which is again what I like about Nottingham is that we're all pulling in the right direction, especially from the coaches' point of view. That's physios, S&C, like head coach, attack coach. Everybody wants the same thing, if that makes sense. We might not always agree on how to get there, but we all essentially want the same thing.
Do you think that comes from kind of the head guy, then the leadership role, kind of aligning, setting out that vision and kind of bringing everybody in, the key stakeholders, to kind of contribute to that vision and then kind of just pushing forward? Is that where the benefits of Nottingham and potentially some of the downfalls, with, French Rugby was for you, just having lack of a clear direction? Or
yeah, I think, to be honest, mate, I think we're all pretty like one. It's not necessarily one person that drives everybody else around here at Notts. It's not one person saying, "Oh, I need you to do this, I need you to do that." It's us actively seeking out, like, what do we need out of this? We're going to do a 6-minute whatever. We're going to do a block here of whatever. What are the key things you're looking for that we can drive from the sideline, or we can drive from behind the ruck, and that could be something as simple as just making sure people are getting off the floor quick. You know what I mean? Making sure people are staying on side. But everybody's in, if that makes sense. Everybody has a role. It's standing on, we're doing exits. Okay, if the ball goes out of play, it's me standing on the sideline 30 meters up the field with the ball ready to throw in if we need to keep playing. Little things like that, and which is what I like about us at the Notts. Whereas again at France, yeah, like when it was the field session, I'd be almost stood there with nothing to do if there were no injured players. Like, oh yeah, it's very different, and I've learned a lot, mate. But mate, it's been awesome. It's been a hell of a ride this year, and results never always go your way and whatnot. And we've not had a great season in terms of where we are in the league and stuff like that. But it's positive going into next year, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
I'm really looking forward to it.
What I guess with you guys being part-time then, is that something you think will change over the coming years, or is that kind of where you're at the moment and that's where you'll stay?
So it's in the plans for the club to go back to being a full-time team again over the next few years. I'm not sure when that'll be or how that'll be, but again, me being excited for next year, part of that is we've actually added an extra day of training. So this year, for example, where we might have trained Tuesday, Thursday, now we've got the Monday. So it's a little bit more time on task. It's a little bit more professional. So it's the next step, if that makes sense. We're bringing in people that want to be a little bit more professional, that might come in the morning because they're doing the community coaching in the morning or in the afternoon or whatever. So we'll actually have a gym slot on in the morning where we'll do some skills behind it. We might do a conditioning top up behind it. We might do some speed work, anything that we see fit that we think is appropriate. We've got more time on task with those players. And we did that this year with the gym stuff, but we might have had 4 boys in the gym. Next year's season, we're potentially going to have up to like 12 lads, which is huge. So then you argue that actually you've got 12 professionals rather than a fully part-time team. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. What so what was your week in terms of training and everything looking for? What was it looking like in season for your guys then? So you mentioned around Tuesday and Thursday. What happened on the Monday? Just give us a little bit of a run through of their week and how you kind of approached their S&C as part of that, if that's all right, mate.
Yeah, cool. So if it were a little bit different week by week. If we played at home, we played on Friday. So what we do is we train Tuesday and Wednesday. Monday we'd almost want them to crack on with the gym session 1, but they'd do that away from the club. And then there'd be either a flush session or a conditioning top up for those that didn't play at the weekend before. Tuesday, I would be there pretty much all day. So we'd have a gym session in the morning. And again, we started implementing some skills between sets or after the gym session for those that were there. In the evening, we'd have a gym session and then it'd lead into a pitch session. So Tuesday was our if we trained Tuesday, Wednesday, Tuesday would have been our heavier day. Wednesday would have been a little bit lighter. So from a physical standpoint, Tuesday were our tougher day. And then Wednesday we'd do a little bit of gym, but it would literally just be some spark up stuff, some mobility stuff, nothing crazy, a little bit of potentiation. And then again, back on the field. Friday, we'd have the boys in that were not playing. We'd have those guys in for a gym top up and then we'd do some conditioning with them. But then it'd be a weekend off. So Saturday games look a little bit different. So we'd put on an option on Monday. Again, where you'd normally do your gym session away from the club, we'll use our partner gym, which is one in Nottingham, where we get whoever wants to come down, we'll gym together. We'll do a little bit of a skill block and then we'll do a conditioning top up. And that's always off feet. So it's not really adding loads of running or anything like that. It's just getting a blow on at the start of the week to just keep on top of the physical condition. So things like watt bikes, assault bikes, skier, stuff like that. We had a bit of fun on Mondays. And then Tuesday would be the same. Thursday would be the same as the previous Wednesday, if that makes sense. A little bit lighter, but obviously we've got that extra day's recovery, so we could probably go a little bit heavier. And even being part-time team, we've got things like GPS where we're trying to monitor training loads and stuff like that, where we set different key performance indicators, drive training that way. So we have different sort of days. We'll have, or especially towards the start of the season, we had a fast day and a physical day. Whereas at the minute we're almost we've been running on like hybrid days. So we'll get the fast, but we'll also get a little bit of the physical. And that's not as necessarily banging each other for 20 minutes. It could just be like a pad drill or something like that. Just some hard acceleration work, for example.
Yeah. With your Tuesday then, where it's typically like the heavier day, how does that generally look for most of your guys then? Like just talking like exercise selection, how do you kind of structure that session? How does that kind of look?
So the harder day for me, it's not necessarily from an S&C, it's more of the harder day on the field stuff. So that's where, again, if we needed to hit the running meters in the middle of the winter when the pitches are horrific, that's when we'd hit those. If we need to do live scrums, which are quite significantly fatiguing, we'll hit those as well. If we feel like there's part of the session where we need to go live and we'll do a little bit of a contact block, then it'll be in that session as well. So that would be quite a gritty, tough session for the boys. Obviously, without going into all the rugby detail of what we did and whatnot, it'd be a little bit of everything mixed in one. So we'd get the high speed running meters, we'd get the collisions that we needed, we'd get the acceleration working. And then Wednesday, it's almost about tightening the ship. So recapping a little bit of what we did on the Tuesday, but at full pace, no contact, just keeping it nice and fast, but sharp as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a different session.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then from the S&C side, then what kind of fits in around that in terms of gym stuff?
This year we've done gym. We've done 3 gyms a week. So we've done a lowest day and upper day, and then we've done like potentiation, like full body, or like med ball work, jumps, things like that. There's times where we've done 2 sessions a week based on accumulative games and whatnot, and where we are in the season, things like that, where we've just had to drop, or if we've had a change of session, we've gone off site one day, we'll mix things up a little bit. But typically, we'll do the lows on the Monday, just kick start, get the legs, get it done early, keep it as far away from the game as possible. Tuesday typically is the upper body day, but then again, we've got lads that are working. So while we say we're having 3 sessions a week, some lads are doing 3, some lads are doing 2. Mm-hmm. So we know that those boys that will struggle to do it on a Monday, they'll just start their week on the Tuesday. That makes sense. What we'll do is we'll just reduce the loading, we'll reduce the volume a little bit if it's a Friday game. So they're not going heavy, going hard. They're almost just keeping up and keeping on top of what they've done beforehand to keep them fresh for the weekend, if that makes sense. Again, everything's geared towards the game. Everything's geared towards rugby. So while we can write the best program in the world, we've got to be adaptable, especially in this part-time environment. Whereas I've learned to be a little bit more, not relaxed, but I don't know, give boys a little bit more leeway. It's probably the right term to use. In terms
of punches a little bit.
Yeah, like I struggle. I really physically cannot get in on a Monday to do my lowers lift. It's like, well, we need that session in. I can't just sacrifice that whole lift, if that makes sense, but we'll adapt it. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's different, but it's good challenges, mate. It's good challenges.
It's a little bit of that trust piece there, I guess, isn't it? You know, kind of being aware of the players who you've got in front of you. You know, you might have these shitbags that are just looking to not do anything, in which case you may need to be a little bit more, not forceful, but, you know, not give them as much leeway.
Push them in the right direction. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. And then you'll have those players where it's like, they're usually fine. If they tell you something's wrong, you're just like, fuck, you know, 999 jobby.
Exactly. And then for the field stuff, for us, really, it's obviously in the warm-up, using that warm-up, the term again, cliche term, microdosing, mate, like hitting some speed reps, hitting some high-speed running early in the start of the session, almost to cover us on back, if that makes sense. We can always bring it in, but we don't want to try and be playing catch-up towards the back end of the week, fatiguing them. So making sure we get a little bit of the run mechanics in, making sure we're getting some speed working, some change of direction for the forwards, getting them off the ground, getting them out quick, get off the line. Like high-speed running for the backs in particular is something that we're quite hot on, and looking at how much high-speed running they've done. For the forwards, it's accelerations, number of accelerations. So changing the pace over that short distance, things like that, getting off the line quick to go and hit somebody up in defence, or making a line break, for example. We try and hit those in both sessions, but we're just smart on how that looks. So obviously Tuesday's the big one where we'll have most of our volume, but then behind that, we can almost predict what each player needs as an average for the rest of the week to know, are we on the money, or are we probably overcooking them, undercooking them a little bit? And again, that's where if you think you're undercooking, you can't be scared to push them just because they might feel a little bit tired. I think you have to push the boundaries sometimes, which I think a lot of S&Cs these days have got a bit of a fear factor around that and not injuring players. And it's not that we're going out to injure players, it's we're going out to get better, and sometimes injuries happen as a result of that, if that makes sense. But I mean, touch wood, we've been quite fortunate with like soft tissue injuries this season. We've had quite a high player availability rate throughout the season, which has been awesome. That's credit to like the whole team. That's the coaching, the physios, like the S&C team, the interns that have been in. Like that's everybody pulling in the right direction. So
that's it. I think GPS can be a really powerful tool, mate. When you've got a really aligned program that can use those opportunities for, like you said, microdosing, using warm-ups as a way of just ticking those boxes. Yeah, I think GPS can really guide that. Is that one of the, I guess, you've mentioned around your philosophy being keeping it simple. Do you use any other technology, or is GPS like one of the main ones that you do use?
Now, we use GPS as one of the main ones, but again, it's not always just the right. Well, we need to hit those numbers. So we add a bit of competition to it. So we don't actually send out a report after training. We just send out who the top three are for the backs and who the top three are for the forwards, for example. Or for the game, who's the fastest man on the day. And we'll present that on a Tuesday. So like, if you're the fastest man, Jordan Webster's actually hit 8.6 meters per second, blah, blah, blah. We'll work with our analyst and we'll clip the video of you actually hitting that, put it on, and drive a little bit of the energy in the room. So then boys next week think, fucking hell, that's me. I'm there next week. Like, I'm hitting that. And little things like we do it different with the top performers. So putting them on a podium and sending it out, or one thing that I added towards the end of the season, making football the FIFA Ultimate cards. I'm not a massive FIFA player or anything like that, but like putting the boys' pictures on there and a couple of the stats from the GPS, mate. Like the buy-in is just massive. Like you just spark conversations, don't you?
Speed 100, banter 0. That
exactly.
type of
like, but that's the thing. You put in all the nice stats, and then at the bottom you add two little digs at people, and everybody gets talking suddenly. But that's for me. It's good having the GPS and hitting those numbers again, yes, but you've got to bring it to life, and you've got to bring the buy-in from the players as well. Like they've got to be understanding. But then all of a sudden you send out an ultimate card with somebody's face on it. The next session at the end, we've got the iPad and I've got 10 lads around me. What have I hit? Did I hit? What's my top speed? And automatically you've got that buy-in. Then you've got 3 players saying, I'm going to do a 20-meter sprint now because I want to see what my top speed is. Does that make sense? So
yeah, absolutely.
Bringing things to life, mate, which is again a massive thing that I've learned this year.
Was that is that something that you had the ability to use in France? Because you mentioned around sometimes the intensity in certain sessions not being there. Did you have GPS or?
Fortunately not.
Yeah.
I mean, once you've been in an environment and seen it happen, it's easy to see it not happening, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, the first 2 clubs are at Doncaster and then in Rouen, both high-performing clubs. So Doncaster got to the final of the playoffs and the semi-final the year after when I was there, and Rouen actually got promoted the year I was there as well. And seeing the difference there to sometimes some of the training sessions we did in Dijon, just a bit dead and there was nothing there, if that makes sense. There was no fizz, there was no spark, and it's all right having the GPS, but you can just see it sometimes, if that makes sense. But yeah, it is what it is, mate. It is what it is. This is my first real experience of this season of having GPS and actually applying it. So we've trialed and errored quite a few things this year and tried different things, and I think we're just about there with it. There's a million things you can look at with the GPS, which is the awesome thing about it. And I know there's loads of different teams doing different things, but again, some of those things that we might want to implement, we probably can't because of time on task, because we don't have 3 sports scientists, we don't have 3 analysts to link it all together. There's me and there's an assistant and there's 1 part-time performance analysis guy. Like, we're not a massive team, so it's again knowing what can we get, what do we need to use it for the right thing, not what we want to use it for. Once the needs, mate, go back to it again.
Yeah, it is that thing, isn't it? It's looking at what the gold standard is, like the IS call it like a what it takes to win model. And you can basically just look at the gold standard, what's happening. If we had all the resources, all the time in the world, what would we do? Okay, well, that's not possible because of our staff. Okay, well, can we do this? Can we do this? It's 100%. Sometimes you have just got to scale down a little bit, just making the best of what you've got.
Definitely.
Being really resourceful and just using your time well. And it's difficult. With your time in France then. So are you a French speaker? Can you speak French?
Yeah, mate, I can now, yeah.
Can now. So could you speak any French when you went out there, or was it like a brand new?
Mate, I knew nothing. I did Spanish at school and I did okay at Spanish at school, but like, mate, I literally knew like bonjour and au revoir, like that was literally it. But being in the first club I was lucky that there were a lot of English speakers, whether they were the whole S&C team there was me and 2 others, and one of them were English, one was Scottish. Performance analyst was English, physio, English staff, English New Zealand. Like a lot of players were English and stuff like that. I was quite lucky because then you had best of both worlds. So I was learning French very slowly that year, but then I could fall back to my English if I needed to, if that makes sense. And they actually gave us lessons through the club, which were awesome. It kickstarted you very base. I mean, when you're in an environment like sport and you're learning a new language, it's very repetitive. So the words that you need for that sport, they're repeated every day. So you pick it up really quick. Which going to Dijon, I almost felt like I was thrown in the deep end because I thought, I'm actually okay at French now. And I got over there and I was like, oh my God, I'm terrible. Yeah. Just because I'd been in such an English speaking environment, even though I was in France. But I picked it up there quite quick, and now like I've still, there's bits that I've probably forgotten, but I still speak to a few of the lads over there every now and then and whatnot. But yeah, it's mental. Like I can barely speak English, mate. I'm from Rotherham. Like, being able to speak French is wild.
That's funny. Me and the missus, we went to France. We went to Paris like maybe 2 months ago for a little holiday, and she speaks, quite a bit of French. She's good.
Oh, class.
And I was going around bloody, what was I saying? Bonjour beaucoup.
Bonjour beaucoup.
What does it mean? Hello very much. Mate, that was me thinking I fucking nailed this. I could not sound more foreign. That's sick. I can remember Brett Bartholomew kind of speaking around. I think it was Brett Bartholomew. I might be butchering that. But it was basically talking around coaching in a foreign language is like really impactful because it allows you to, you're actually being conscious about the words that you're saying. You're not just saying fluff. When you're in conversation in your own language, it might be like, it might be this, you might use too many words. It's a little bit more indirect. Did you 100%. Find that to be true?
Yeah, and not even just the language that you use, but actually demonstrations and the other side of coaching. I'm not just talking, I'm actually showing people how to do it because I can't say it. Does that make sense? So then it's a constraint of coaching, innit? You take away one thing and then how do you use the other to get what you need to get? So you take away the use of the voice because I don't actually know how to explain, but what I can do is I can show you, if that makes sense. Which obviously the explanations then became a lot easier as I got better at the language. But yeah, it's then being physically capable of demonstrating what you want and getting them to understand how it looks, if that makes sense, without using the words. But definitely, 100%.
Yeah, it's I think I've had a few like times in my kind of career so far where speaking just hasn't been that easy because of either the music's incredibly loud, or for example, I've had a few kind of international students, nothing like a full team. It definitely does challenge you in a slightly different way, but I haven't been thrown into a full kind of foreign environment. So hats off to you there, mate. It can't be easy.
The good thing, the weirdly good thing about it is that everybody knows a bit of English. Do you know what I mean? Like no matter where you go, I went to Dijon, like even like we had a couple of Fijian guys or Samoan guys, a couple of South Africans. Like you've got an English coach there, so you still have that to fall back on, but it just weren't as much, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's definitely we're a challenge, mate, but one that I loved. As much as I've said, there were no intensity and this and that, and we did this wrong or whatever, like it were an awesome experience, mate. And I just went for it. I don't know why or how it come around. It just happened to come around, and I just went.
I can remember that time because I can remember being sat in the S&C gym with you, and we were on about, I don't know, VBT or something. And then it seems like the next day I saw, right, it's been great, guys. I'm off to France.
I'm off to France. See you later. Mate, really weird.
Yeah. How soon did that come up? Was you applying? Like, is
so
that something?
Basically, like, we had an intern S&C at Doncaster who was a physio by trade. And I saw that she went out to France and I just didn't think anything of it. And I was like, oh yeah, cool. Like saw this job advert come up for it and it were an English post. So I thought, oh, well, I might apply. So I actually messaged the girl who's the physio saying, oh, I see you moved out to France. Like I've just seen this job ad for this club. Like, what's it like over there sort of thing? Like, is it worth it? And she's like, oh, I'm at the same club. So she put a bit of a word in to the head of S&C for me, and I got an interview. But I went to London for this interview, mate, and I just come out of it. I spoke to my dad after on the phone. I was like, well, I'm not going to fucking France. Like, that went so bad. Like, I thought it went terrible. And then 2 days later, they called me like, oh, mate, like, let's get you over. Let's go. And after that, a couple of weeks later, I were in France. I'd never even been before, mate. Like, honestly, knew about 3 words in French. And I was just like, what am I doing? But yeah.
It's a funny thing around that interview piece, mate. Like, you sometimes have no idea, do you? Like, you really like what they're thinking on the other side is totally different to what you think's going on in your own head. I've had both examples of that. You know, I've had, I fucked that, got the job, and then I've had ones where I'm like, fucking, I'll just sign it now. You know, I'll just come and move in, and then
I know what you mean. You don't get it.
You just get rejection. You don't get feedback or anything. So
weird.
That's funny, mate. But what's next for you, mate? What's next for you in terms of like Nottingham then? So how's the program growing this year? What's it looking like?
We're in off season now, so everybody's on a little bit of a well-deserved time off. But exciting things are happening down at the Lady Bay Stadium, mate. So we just rebuilt our gym. We've got a brand new gym, which, to be honest, quite a few of the boys have helped us build. It looks awesome. We'll have to get you down, mate. And then we start again on the 1st of July. So we're into pre-season, and then we're straight in. We're hoping to be a little bit more consistent this year in the champ, get a few more better results, but things are going in the right direction. Like I say, adding that extra training day and having a little bit more time on task, having the right people around you, like we are building something special. So I hope it pulls off. It's going well, and it seems like it's only going to get better. I'm excited for next season, mate.
Hey, it sounds positive. It does. You can just feel it in the air. You can see that you're actually buzzing for the year.
Mate, I can't wait. Like, I've only just finished and I'm already excited for next season, which normally at this stage I'm like, right, I need a month off. Leave me alone. Don't speak to me. You know what I mean? Like, but now, mate, I'm honestly buzzing. Like, we've got a good group of lads coming in that we've signed. It's going to be awesome, man. It's going to be awesome.
That's cool. Love it. Cool. Right. I'm conscious of time, mate. So thank you for coming on today. Where can people find you? Do you do social media much? Is that
not really big on social media. I used to dabble a little bit, but I've not really bothered with it. I've got my personal one, but again, I don't really post much on it. It's Jack Wezza on Instagram. Really basic, but
love it.
Not for me.
Not for you. There it is. Love it.
Not for me.
Nice one, mate. I really appreciate your time today, mate. It's great to see how
thanks a lot for having me on. Appreciate your time, mate.